Hey, it's Chris with Life 180, and in this video, I want to talk to you about government stimulus and how it's going to lead to massive inflation, and more importantly, what the trickle-down effect of that inflation is and how bad it's going to be for our economy. So think about it this way. I guess before I get into that, I do want to say I have another video coming out in a couple days. So if you haven't already, and this is a topic that you're interested in, make sure that you like this video, make sure you subscribe to this channel, hit the bell, that way you get notified, because I got an amazing video coming out that's going to do a much more deep dive on the government stimulus packages, the CPI, how inflation is calculated, how the low number that the federal funds, the Fed is saying that the federal, the inflation number of 1.7% for CPI right now is actually below the target of 2%, and that's kind of garbage, and all the different reasons why that's the case. It's a much more comprehensive video, and so that's going to be coming out. So make sure you subscribe and hit the bell and get notified when that comes out, because I think it's going to be amazing. I think it's going to be a lot of value to everybody watching this video. Now, here's the number one reason that I think we have a big problem with inflation in this country. Now, the reason is interest rates go up. When inflation goes up, so do interest rates. Think about it this way. We are living in an environment right now where we have almost $30 trillion in debt. I want to pull this up and I want to show you the debt clock. Now, the debt clock right now, you can see we have $28 trillion in debt right there. In the top left corner, you go to usdebtclock.org and you'll see what I'm talking about. But the bottom line is this: we have a massive debt issue in our country. Now, the way we're able to manage that, the way we've been handling this massive debt load in our country, is the fact that we have been living in the lowest interest rate environment that we've ever seen in our country for a prolonged period of time. And so when you're paying 1% on the debt that you have for your country at $30 trillion, that's a manageable thing. But the thing is that as inflation goes up with everything else, they have to have interest rates go up with it. The last instance that this happened, we had inflation. Actually, we had stagflation in the 70s, and that's where we're going up. That's where we're coming into right now. I'm going to get into that more in the next video, but just by definition, stagflation is simply saying that the rate of inflation is going up at a rate faster than the productive value in society is going up, right? So with everything that's going on with the money printing, it typically doesn't lead just to inflation, it leads to something much worse, which is stagflation, which is saying cost of goods are going up, the cost of living is going up, but the cost of production, meaning how much money we're earning, is staying still. So it really creates this big divide in the haves and have-nots, right? The growing gap between the middle and the class and the wealthy, right? That's where that comes from. So circling back to the topic here, the bottom line is that what happens is when inflation goes up, because of our Keynesian economic society, that's just in economic theory, Keynesian economics, is the fact that we have an elastic currency. When times are good, we have higher interest rates. What happens with higher interest rates is that's a way for the Federal Reserve to take money out of the economy. More money is paid to the banks in interest. A lot of money gets paid back to the Federal Reserve. They take that money out of circulation. When times are tough, the Federal Reserve has the ability to print money, i.e. they printed $9 trillion now. That's 22% of our money supply right now. It's insane to think that they've done that in just over a year. But they have the ability to print the money when times are bad. And during that time, that's supposed to stimulate the economy. Things will get good, and ultimately they hope that things get good on a relatively controlled manner, and then they can raise interest rates and pull that money out of circulation. But here's the problem: we've been printing all this money, and we haven't been paying the piper, so to speak, and dealing with our real issues. The government, the Congress, all these things, they keep trying to create more entitlements and more benefits for people, and increasing more debt and more government spending. But the problem is they haven't dealt with the problem. And so we have this $30 trillion debt almost. And once again, because of the low interest rate environment, we've been able to deal with it. Well, here's what happens. In 1979, in one day, the federal funds rate went from 6% to 19%. 19%, like it raised 13% in basically a day, right? So think about that. Paul Voelker back then was a superstar. One of the reasons that if you look back through history, the 80s were a booming decade, was the booming 80s, is because of the fact that we started off in December of 1979 with Paul Voelker jacking up the federal funds rate. 1980 was basically a financial crisis. But then what did we have? We had a decade, almost 2 decades, quite frankly, of interest rates being really high and slowly declining. So what happens when interest rates are 20% and mortgages are 20%, and then the next year they're 19, and then 18, and then 17, and 16, and then 14, and then 13. They keep going down. What happens? That stimulates the economy, and it makes it more and more affordable, and it makes it easier for people to compete and to produce. Ultimately, people can refi houses. Mortgages are easier to get, right? The mortgage payments go down. People do cash out refis. People are building value in their houses, and that's one of the things that led to a big real estate boom, is the fact that, listen, over the last 40 years, if you look at the value of real estate, it's not just the fact that from 1980, a house that you bought for $100,000 is now worth $700,000. It's that house probably, it hasn't really appreciated that much when you take into account in 1980, you paid 20% for it, and now you're paying 2.9% for it, right? Like, if you really account for that and take in what was the monthly payment and then adjust for inflation for that number, I bet your house hasn't actually earned you as much money as you think it has. So that's a side note. But when it comes to this, on the inflation side of things, they're going to have to increase increase interest rates. It doesn't have to be much. If the Federal Reserve increases the federal funds rate to, let's say, 5%, that increase alone, because 70% of all of our government debt right now is short-term debt, meaning it's rolling over on a consistent basis. So every year our debt's rolling over. So if that happens and our interest rate goes up to 5%, they're not keeping interest rates low for you and me. They're keeping interest rates low for them because they don't know what else to do. Everybody that's involved in any kind of capacity of any decision making here when it comes to the government understands the fact that they're not doing you a favor, they're doing themselves a favor, because as soon as the federal funds rate goes up, as soon as they have to pay more interest on the government debt, we're not going to be able to do it. But here's what's going to happen. Eventually, you're going to have to deal with it. You're going to have to, take your medicine, eat, deal with the pain that comes with it, and hope you get through it, and hope people are strong enough to get through it. Because here's the bottom line. If we go to 5% federal funds rate, which, by the way, is still below the all-time average for a federal funds rate, which is 5.4%, 5%, we're paying $1.2 trillion a year just to service the interest on our debt as a nation. Think about that. We're going to pay $1.2 trillion. People are freaking out about the fact that we spend like $800 billion a year on national defense, on our military. What's going to happen when we're spending $1.2 trillion just to service the debt? Once again, now the point of this video is the trickle-down effect. So now we're spending $1.2 trillion just to service the debt. We can't afford to do that. So what's going to happen? The government is going to have to increase taxes, right? So there's a couple things that happen there. So increased interest rates and increased taxes. Both of those things independently cause stress on the stock market, right? They do. Because when you increase interest rates, what's it do? The cost of business goes up. What's that do? It affects stock prices because margins go down, prices of business go up, and so performance and margins go down, and so dividend payments go down. Typically, stock prices don't perform as well. People don't have as much money to invest because consumers every day are paying higher credit card payments, higher car loan payments, higher everything payment. The cost of living for everybody goes up, so that has a negative impact in the stock market. It always does, almost every single time. Now, the other thing is taxes going up. Taxes always have a negative impact in the stock market. Look at what happens if the government even talks about raising taxes at all. If the federal funds rate even mentions potentially raising the interest rates 1/4 percentage point, look at the market the next day. People run for the hills. They're scared to death. So the impact of those two things are just terrifying for the potential of the market. But the bottom line is you can't get away from it, right? Like, if you want to be able to control inflation, you need to raise interest rates. And at the end of the day, we cannot keep doing this for too long without doing something to control. We need somebody who is bold, like Paul Voelker was in 1979, to come in and kind of rein everybody in and control this runaway, this situation that could become runaway inflation. And when you understand in my next video that comes out, you'll see what I'm talking about. Now, here's the bottom line. This is why it all comes back, as you know with me. This is why I need to get this point home, and I'm just gonna keep pounding this home because it's so important, because I get a lot of people that keep hammering me, IUL, IUL, IUL. I don't believe the stock market is good right now because I think I'm a big believer. You wanna make money, you wanna invest low, you wanna buy low, sell high. We're at an all-time high in the market. Why would we wanna do that? Well, I don't believe 401ks are good unless you're getting a match. I think you should contribute up to the match and then be done with it from there. And I think even there are certain circumstances where I think certain people probably don't even want to participate in a 401k, even if they are getting a match, depending on what else they'd be wanting to do with that money. IRAs, I'm not a big fan of putting money in control of the government. Think about it this way. In a 401k and an IRA, what's happening is you're putting your money into an account that the government has the ability, you're deferring taxes today to put into an environment where later you're gonna have to pay taxes, earned income taxes, right? So think about it this way. Right now, with what I just said about taxes, with the government debt, with the direction everything's going, do you think taxes are going down or up? Why would you want to defer your ability to pay taxes today to kick into an environment, kick the can down the road into an environment where you're probably gonna be paying more in taxes? Even if you're in a lower tax bracket, your tax rate will probably be higher later, right? Like that's just, in my opinion, I don't see that there's any other way around it, because they could literally tax the wealthy. And I know there's a lot of people out there that say, oh, I'll just tax the wealthy. You could tax 90 to 95% of the wealthy's income, and it's still not going to solve the problem that we have. This is a problem that every American is going to have to deal with together. No way around it. And we have to come up with a solution. That solution is going to be increasing interest rates, because if we don't, we will have hyperinflation. We will have at least runaway inflation like we did in 1979, where the inflation rate hit 13.5%. And when that happens, interest rates have to go up to kind of pull that in. And when that happens, we have a debt issue. And this is, once again, this is an environment, once again, buy low, sell high. And if you believe that theory, and if you believe, because of the fact that the market has been on a 12-year bull run and the economic environment right now is going to put stress on the markets, that all these things are in consideration, that IULs are not going to perform where they're projected, where the illustration rates of people that are saying they're going to perform are. Granted, they've looked great over the past decade, and if you bought one in 2012 and you got lucky and timed it right, you probably got close to what you were illustrated at, and good for you. But guess what? Moving forward, it's not going to perform the same way, right? And that because the market is just, I think, going to get hammered over the next couple of years because of the economic environment that we're in. Now, let's say I'm wrong, right? Let's say for some reason the stock market happens to, do well despite, they find some way to have the market do well, succeed, despite the fact that interest rates have increased, despite the fact that taxes go up. Let's just say that happens. I don't see a situation that happens, but let's just, for sake of argument, for all my naysayers out there, say that happens. Well, what happens in that environment is it actually works towards the whole life insurance policy's benefit, because I believe as interest rates go up, IULs are going to struggle, period. But let's say that it does well enough where cap rates are what they are and whatever, that a whole life policy in the situation right now where if the fixed market interest rates go up, dividend rates and whole life policies are going to be able to increase again, right? So now dividends that are 6% will probably go to 7 or 8%, right? Like that if the federal funds rate goes from 1 to 5, for instance, then I could see that happening. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that's why I'm a big believer right now. If you can lock in 4%, no matter what happens, if the economy takes a dive, or if they do the right thing and they raise interest rates and they cause stress on the economy, that's going to hurt the stock market performance. It's going to help the fixed market. Dividends I'm a big believer that whole life insurance policies, unlike any other time in the history of this country where dividend payments, the dividend scale, like what the companies are actually crediting their policyholders, for the last 20 years, the dividend scales have been reducing because of the reducing interest rate environment. Well, guess what? What happened the last 30 years can't happen the next 30 years. We've lived in a declining interest rate environment for 40 years. Now we have to live in either a flat environment or one that's going to increase. I'm a big believer, if we don't increase it, we're in trouble. And in an increasing interest rate environment, whole life insurance, I believe, has the ability to outperform what the illustrations show, because as we increase dividends, as the fixed markets get better, the dividend rates in whole life insurance policies will also get better. So if this makes sense to you, and I hope it does, if you have any questions or comments, go ahead and comment below. I love it. I love responding to them. I get a lot of fun out of it, and I really look forward to engaging with every comment possible. So go ahead and do that if you have any questions. And if you found value in this video, please hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit that bell. That way you get notified every single time I launch a new video. As you could tell, I've been creating, hopefully you could tell, I've been creating a lot of content on this stuff because I'm super passionate. This video alone shows why I am so passionate about whole life insurance, because if you don't get it after this video, I don't know. I'm going to keep making videos to try to get you to understand why it's so important to go whole life instead of index universal life. That what we have, the economic storm that we have coming down the pipeline right now, is like nothing that this country has ever seen. We have never been in this position ever. I don't want to fearmonger. I'm not saying it's the end of the world. I'm not saying, any of that stuff. If you watch my Life 180 pyramid video, and I'll link it above here in a card, if you watch that video, you understand that I believe there's opportunity in every economic environment. In fact, if you position yourself properly for the economic storm that's about to come, you can actually massively take advantage of it. And I'm going to talk about that more in my next video as well. I know so because I already filmed it and it's just getting edited. So I'm telling you, it's going to be exciting. So make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit that bell. That way you get notified when that video comes out next week. And I really, just keep looking forward to creating this content and serving you in a big, powerful way. If you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you have any videos around this topic, any questions about that you want me to make or answer or whatever, I'm happy to do so. I would love to. I'd be honored if you, put a question or comment in there that would, give me ideas for topics and content to research, because I just geek out about this stuff and I love it. So that's it for now. I'm going to stop rambling. You go out there, have a blessed, inspirational day, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.